Welcome to Underdubs, a podcast about 70s progressive rock and more. This podcast is a conversational music variety show with a focus on the classic progressive rock artists of the 1970s and how their music has shaped culture, technology, and the music of today. We'll, of course, cover the classic prog bands like Yes and Genesis, but also other forms like the Canterbury scene, neo-prog, proto-prog, and fusion, and all points in between. Your hosts, Brian Donahue and Pat Strauser, are two of the founding members of the instrumental progressive rock fusion band Volare, based in Athens, Georgia, from the mid-1990s. In this episode, we speak with Kieran, who has a YouTube channel called Genesis Live Archive. Be sure to check out the links that we provide in the notes for playlists and other content that we discuss here. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Brian.
Howdy, Pat.
How's it going?
Good, man. I hear you've got a special guest for us today.
I do. We have a guest. And today we have Kieran, who is best known for an amazing Genesis archive that he has on YouTube. Well, I should say his channel is called Genesis Live Archive. Looking at it, he's got 193 Genesis bootlegs. Is that what you'd call? I guess you'd call them bootlegs. So, Kieran, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
Hello.
No, the name of your channel, your older channel used to be called...
I used to go by Kieran is Home. I think that's what a lot of people in the community are familiar with. That was the hot spot.
Yeah, that's when I found you, I guess a couple years ago or a year or more ago on YouTube. And I was just impressed, first of all, with the amount of content is overwhelming for most mere mortals. But also what I appreciated, and this is coming from somebody who has done some audio archive work in the past, is like how well organized and put together it is.
Appreciate that.
It's easy at a glance to know what's going on, what the content is. Whatever method you have of laying your stuff out is very conducive to people like me who are I'm listening like as I commute. I'll pick a concert and listen to it like it's an album.
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into Genesis and how that got started for you?
Yeah, I would love to. So honestly, it kind of all goes back to when I was a teenager. My love of just music and just eventually Genesis. It all started like surprisingly with the band Queen. Queen is like, that was my first love of music. That's like my other band that I kind of know a little too much stuff about that no sane person should know. But it was more of just, it's actually kind of silly just talking about it now, but it was just, I was listening to like some Queen live performances, like professionally filmed, like the releases. And I was listening to Freddie Mercury like perform these songs, and I was thinking to myself, like, he's singing them like very differently to how he sung them on the album. Like I was listening to like some of these songs where it's like very demanding on the vocals, and I was thinking like he's dodging like this high note, or he's like dodging this part, and I was thinking, or like this guitar solo is like different to how they do it on the album. And I was just very fascinated with like how they would change these things on stage. But it always kind of like, it almost bugged me in a way, like hearing Freddie like almost sing it like songs conservatively compared to like how well known he's like known to like go all out on like his studio vocal performances. Long story short, I eventually came across like the world of like audience recordings and bootlegs, and I was able to just stumble upon like these performances that have never been released in professional form, or it was like Freddie Mercury doing like studio level performances on stage. I got so used to like the officially released ones where he's like kind of almost weak by comparison. It was just kind of like, it opened a whole world for me hearing like, wow, like there are shows where he's in studio form on stage, and it impressed me all the more, like having this separation between these performances that are like really above average, like exceptionally good, and then like the more average ones. Just kind of just the way that all these performances differ was such a fascinating concept to me. Plus, ever since I was a kid, I always just loved the idea of like history and stuff like that. To some people, it may just be a concert, but without these people that, if they never snuck in their dinky little cassette recorders, that show would have been played and would have never been heard again. It would have just been lost the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these recordings are over half a century old now. But point is, it's just kind of that fascination with Queen and stuff like that eventually grew as I got older and I checked out like progressive rock, like first King Crimson, a little bit of Yes. And eventually it was kind of Genesis that I stumbled upon. And I was like, just that love that I had for Queen. It was that kind of just like, wow, I've never heard a band anything like this. I've never heard
Mm.
arrangements just that are so just so perfectly laid out, and the chord progressions and the melodies and the storytelling and the vocals of Peter Gabriel and then eventually Phil Collins. It's just it was overwhelming, almost, just this love. And I knew I had to kind of sink my teeth into the world of live bootlegs the same way I did for Queen. The issue with Genesis, though, is that compared to some other bands like Led Zeppelin and Queen, they had on YouTube already these, similar to what I'm doing, these YouTube channels where they have like this beautiful archive of like thumbnails and like well structured playlists and like timestamps in the description, or even like write ups, which is something that I always do. I always give like a little brief write up and my opinion on the show. Um, my point is, there was nothing like that for Genesis. There was people that had uploaded the shows to YouTube, but they hadn't really taken the time to like properly lay them out. They would just kind of upload it and be like, all right, this is from this tour. Here's the timestamps. That's it. It's okay. It did the job. But I felt like there needed to be something more. There needed to be like, I guess, like a one-stop shop where like you have it all organized by playlist. You have like a brief thought about the show. So like you can hear like what my opinions are, if it's like a really good night or if it's an average night or if it's even like a weak night. I feel like stuff like that, it's always good if people are trying to like find a specific performance, whatever fits their needs. But I just felt like it was almost like my unwritten duty to just kind of like, there needs to be a place where like Genesis fans can easily access this stuff. Because not everyone gets torrenting. Not everyone wants to download a show. Some people just want to go to YouTube, look up a show, boom, you have the show in like 5 seconds. And it just kind of grew from there. I did that for 4 years before the O channel got taken out. 4 years. I can't believe it's already been 4 years. But we've had the new channel for 2 months now, and it's a slow but steady process of getting everything back up. Basically everything I've uploaded, including on the O channel, I always try to like even correct the speed. I'm very sensitive to pitch. I have pretty good relative pitch. I'm a musician as well, and it always bothers me like if a recording is like even like 1% too slow or like 1% too fast. So I always try and like even put the finer attention to details like that. So like you're almost guaranteed like the speed / pitch of a recording that I post is going to be like accurate to how it was at the show, because you'll come across like some bootlegs on the internet and they're like running way too fast, like it sounds like Phil sounds like a chipmunk, or it's running like way too slow and they sound like a baritone. And I always think like that's like the least amount of work you can do is at least correct the speed and pitch.
Yeah, cool.
So I have a question about the your process.
Yeah.
Where are you getting your source material? Like I'm presuming a lot of these are cassette tapes, or are you getting like reel to reels, or like what formats and where are they coming from, and what's your your restoration process? Like what software do you use and things like that?
Right. Okay. So I don't have any physical stuff to transfer stuff myself. I have friends who do that stuff depending on what it is, but 99% of the time, a lot of it is sourced from, this is well known for Genesis fans. It's a site called the Genesis Movement. It's a site that's been around since like the late 90s, early 2000s. And they have a torrent section of their site where like over the last 20 something years, people have just uploaded their recordings and you can just torrent them there. The Genesis Movement has their own section of the site where they basically have, like lists of every date Genesis ever did. So you can just go there, you can see every tour date they did ever in order, and then you can cross compare like, okay, there's a recording of that one, there's no recording of that one. So it all started with that, just kind of figuring out from there. The site is old, so there are a lot of like inaccurate dates, like dates missing or dates that are fake and stuff like that, but I generally I source it all from there. But I work with a lot of other people too, like on a platform called Discord. It's like a communication platform, and there's a lot of us like. Generally, I tend to do is like the speed correcting side of audio. I'm not much of an audio expert outside of speed correcting, but I have colleagues who are like great with anything outside of that, like if a tape needs it, like if there's like digital clicks and pops that need removed, they'll help me out with that. Or if there's like tape drag or stuff like that. But generally, we like to take a less is more side of approach to like our releases as well, because there's a lot of bootlegs, especially in the 2000s. A lot of people, like when they were digitally transferring their stuff, they're like, you can reduce the hiss, so it must sound better. But they didn't realize that they were destroying like the dynamics of the sound. They're like, no hiss, it's better, but hiss is a crucial part of the dynamics and sound. So a lot of the years over time, we've been trying to track down like the raw sources of recordings, because another problem that the community's kind of faced is these like remasters from the 2000s became the norm over the actual like raw untouched transfer. So we've also spent a lot of time tracking down like the completely raw transfers, making sure those are getting archived, stuff like that, because it's important that that stuff gets preserved. Even if a remaster may sound better, it's still important that the untouched, untreated transfer gets preserved as well. But yapping aside, I generally just speed correct. I get my friends to do the dirty work for me.
I've never heard anyone talk about this. I don't find myself in the archivist's world really, like at that level, but that's a really, I presume it's a widespread view, and it makes a lot of sense to me, because I do work in production, and it is interesting. I don't hear anyone really talk about like, keep the original, don't leave it as clean as untouched as possible, because you're right, you do lose all that top end. Just let it be what it is, right?
Right. So, there are certain cases like where some tapes, if they're like particularly bad or damaged in some way, like I will get them to work on it a little bit more, because there are some cases where like you will need to do like a little bit of noise reduction or things like that. But generally for audience recordings, a lot of the sound is keeping like that natural tape hiss. It's not, you can't really try and treat an audience recording the same way you treat like a perfectly mastered studio recording. It's two totally different ball games.
So I'm curious, Kieran, about, there have been some Genesis tour dates where there's debate about, was this the early show in a town in Italy? Was this the late show the night before? Or let's say the North American Trick of the Tail tour, Phil says hello Cleveland when he means something else or whatever, So there's got to be examples of dates where you can't be 100% sure about, okay, well, this has got to be April 11th because of this factor, and this factor. There's got to be a certain number of dates that are kind of iffy, where you're not 100% sure when it was.
I mean, now and again, you will come across stuff like that, but honestly, like any dates that, like if we have figured out that they are wrong, over time, we have compiled enough evidence to argue like why something should be changed. I mean, like, for example, we had these dates from the Nursery Crime Tour. The band did, they did 2 shows on August 20th, 1972, about a month before the release of Foxtrot. These two, and we had recordings for both shows on August 20th. But the thing is, we found out the recording that's labeled as the early show is actually the late show, and the late show is actually the early show. Like it was vice versa. So we came across like 5 or 6 attendees, like who commented, like I guess on Facebook, or there was also like this this Italian blog for Genesis fans, and they would just tell you things like, "Oh yeah, I was at the early show." And I was at the late show or whatever, and they would say like, "Oh yeah, the late show had Harold the Barrow." We have recordings of both of them, for example, and only one of those shows has Harold the Barrow on it, and it used to be labeled as the early show. But this guy who's at the late show, he said, no, Harold the Barrow was at the late show. If you have like 6 people saying that they did this, and you have one person that says it isn't, I think it kind of, the balance is off.
Preponderance of the evidence, right?
I love the detective work that this involves. It's sort of like corroborating the Dead Sea Scrolls or something.
Yeah. It's like archaeology.
It is quite a few of us. Like I'm not just a one-man team. I mean, I may just be the one who runs the channel, but there is a lot of us who are working together to give you like the best possible sources. I'm just generally the guy who does like I said, the speed work and the actual listening and like writing up of the shows. Because I love the idea of like hearing a tour progress and like
Yeah,
hearing
yeah.
things change or this happening and this happening. I love that kind of almost the trivia part of it, like hearing all these differences night to night, or when the vocalists, like if Peter or Phil, if they're having like a rough vocal night, because there's a lot of those, or if they're having like an exceptionally strong vocal night, or if the band is a little sloppy this night, or this night they're like really creative and the improvisation's like really on point. It keeps it fresh. There's this myth among Genesis fans that they never improvised live, and of course they were no Grateful Dead. It's not like they were a jam band or anything like that. But there's still improv night to night. It's not like every single time you're going to hear this song, it's every detail is the exact same. The drumming is always going to be different. Or Phil, he's going to like change his inflections or his phrasings on this line. Or like if he's having like a rough night, if there's like a really demanding part for his vocals, he's going to sing it lower, stuff like that. Even like songs like I Know What I Like. That was a song they jammed on live. The studio version's like 4 minutes. Over time, live, it would grow. There's like 12-minute versions out there because they would add this whole jam in the middle, and those always differ between each night. So that's kind of also a myth that I always wanted to clear up as well, like diving into this. Like Genesis never improvised live, but they were big improvisers. It's just they weren't a jam band, but there's still enough variety where you could listen to like 3 recordings and you'll notice something different across every single one of those. It's not like you're going to listen to all 3 and be like, this is just the same show. Like, of course not.
That is so cool.
Can I ask you about particularly memorable shows? Because if you read Genesis interviews or lore, there's always a few shows here and there like, oh, that's the night that the roadie came out and he was naked, or that's the night that the strippers came on during Supper's Ready in Seattle or whatever. I imagine you've got some memorable shows in mind that stick out for something unique. Could you maybe cherry pick a few unique gig experiences that people could find on your channel?
Yeah, unique, memorable experiences. There's Genesis has a lot of like some special nights where they do like a special song and stuff like that. There's an Italian show on the Foxtrot tour, August 22nd, or Foxtrot tour, but it was before the album came out. It's kind of confusing, but August 22nd, 1972, they played Seven Stones from the Nursery Crime album. They only ever played that live a handful of times, but that is the one and only recording we have of them doing Seven Stones live. Yeah. So if you ever wanted to hear them do Seven Stones live, that's one of the things. A very big historical document is the famous Dublin 1972 performance. That was the first time Peter Gabriel ever came out on stage in a costume. During the musical box, he didn't tell the rest of the band what his plan was, but at the end of the song, during the part where he's doing the "Why don't you touch me," that whole section, he came out as the fox on the Foxtrot album cover.
Can you hear the audience react when he walks out?
You can, but it's more of like almost like a shock, a silence. You can hear almost the audience, because like this is 1972. You're seeing some guy come out in a dress and a fox's head. They had like the world had never seen anything like that. Like that's nowadays, like people are doing, of course, way crazier stuff. But in 1972, in Dublin especially, like the world was just a lot different. But just to see that was like shocking. But point is, like, that's something that's Peter's very known for, is his costumes. So the fact that we have a historical document of the first time he ever wore a costume on stage, that's very cool that we have stuff like that. London, the Rainbow Theatre, February 9th, 1973. That was the band's first show where they introduced a lot of like the more famous costumes, like the Willow Farm flower, like staples of like the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis. It's not a great recording, I will admit to you. You're going to need bootleg ears for that one, but it's still nice to have any sort of document of a show like that. Stuff for me that comes to mind, this is one of my favorite performances they ever did, was in New York City, November 22nd, 1973, on the Selling England tour. That's like the famous Thanksgiving show. But that's like a very memorable performance just because the band is in great form. They pull out the knife, which was like rare for that period. Stuff like that. It's like a classic show. If you're trying to get into Genesis bootlegs, New York 1973 is the way to go. the Roxy Theater show on December 19th, 1973. That was during Christmas time. So during the ending of Supper's Ready, Peter came out dressed as Santa Claus. Normally he would come out in his like all white sparkly leotard, but on this for this date he came out as Santa, and you can even hear him do like a ho 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 like on the recording. So that's kind of fun. Um, there's the Drury Lane performances from January 1974. And for the ending of Supper's Ready, for those shows, Peter was flown in the air. Rather than just coming out, he was actually raised up in a cable in the air. So we have stuff like that. I guess these all come to mind for me. I could go on for for hours about just recordings that have like historical, like fun stuff like that, or what have you. Or the Oslo. I'll bring up Oslo, 1975, February 19th, 1975. That was the opening night of the European leg of the Lamb Tour. And during the final song, they would always end the show with like a huge flashbang and explosion. But one of the roadies that was touring with them since the North American tour, he didn't realize that the powder, the explosive powder, was like far stronger in Europe than it was in America. So the explosion at the end of the show ended up being way stronger than it should have been. Like a chunk of the stage got blown off because of how powerful it was. Mike Rutherford thought he was going to go deaf just because of how loud it was. And Phil even told the roadie off and told him that he was fired. And the band, they usually would play like an encore of the musical box. They didn't do that this night, understandably, after that explosion. They were just so...
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a recording of that night.
Yeah, there's a recording of that night, and you can hear, even on a recording like that one, the bang is just so loud that it just completely clips
I gotta hear that.
the microphone. It is a loud explosion.
Phil tells that story in the Genesis A History video, where he's like, the roadie pokes his head around the corner and says, "Sorry," and I shout, "You're fired."
Yeah, you're fired. Yeah, and it is shocking, like how loud it is, even on the recording like that one.
I actually had a question though. So, are you dealing strictly with private citizens having recorded it on like a Nagra or something like that, or are there any board tapes involved in these archival projects, or is it all pretty much like a dude with a tape recorder somewhere on the 12th row? Part of my question is like, what is the range in potential quality that you're dealing with these recordings?
Yeah, it varies, honestly. It can vary pretty heavily, I would say. I mean, that's the case for a lot of bands. I mean, generally, most of the recordings have circulated like for decades within just like what you said, just a random guy recorded it, like maybe in the 12th row, like wherever, and he would trade it around like back in the day, like before the internet. Traders would get to know each other, and they'll be like, I'll copy my recording onto this cassette if you give me your recording on your cassette, just trading circles. And then eventually with the digital age, people started circulating those online, stuff like that. For board tapes, Genesis thankfully has a pretty wide plethora of board tapes out there, I think, compared to some other bands. There's a lot of board coverage for Genesis, thankfully. So there's that. And then in some cases, for releases we've done, we actually try and find new recordings of stuff. Like if something that maybe didn't circulate in the past, there's a whole process for I guess stuff like that too, which is a part of the archival process and mindset that we have. But it does vary. I guess if that's the answer you're looking for, like some recordings may not be like ideal, but there's enough board recordings where I think like you could experience like every era of the band in board quality, I would say.
Right. Yeah, no, that is kind of what I was wondering, because I mean, Brian and I were in a band together 30 years ago, and so I became the de facto archivist for our band, and we had dozens of tapes, board quality, a lot of just, the boom box in the corner recording a rehearsal. And so there was a lot of variety of quality there too. I was like, this is kind of a lot of content. It's kind of a lot of material for a band that was only around for 3 years is to have. And so I've got, I probably have 50 tapes, cassette tape of stuff. So that's part of the reason I was wondering is, and for me, like my instinct is to, like, when I hear most bootlegs, I'm like, I want to hear a board tape. I want to hear stereo separation. I want to hear clarity, just because I'm, being a musician too. It's like, well, I'm not interested in it first as a historical record artifact. More as I like listening to clean, like, kind of like when you're listening to the radio, you adjust. Remember when you would adjust the wheel on the radio dial to make sure that you're getting rid of the RF? You're like, then it's cleared up. So, but I do, conversely, I do like this idea of, oh man, I'm listening to this with a different set, with archivist's ears. And I'm like, oh man, this guy sounds like he's house right. Because the keyboards are louder or whatever,
Right. No, there's board tapes on there.
Okay.
Brian would know anyone more than anyone here than what happened a few months ago with our thing, the Giga Leak. I think
right.
We wanted to talk about that stuff. That's a whole other subject matter. But from that, we released almost 50 something soundboards, something like that, all at once, and that was quite the project. That was quite the undertaking, and those were like never before heard soundboards of the band. So Genesis definitely has their soundboard coverage pretty well down. Yeah. And even then there are some audience recordings where it's of course not like a soundboard, but there are very, very high quality audience recordings out there. Because one of the things that some bootleg fans are a fan of is when you have a soundboard, it's not like a multi-track which has like audience microphones. A soundboard, it'll have minimal audience sound, which some people, they prefer that. But one of the advantages you get of getting like a really high quality audience recording is you get the full beautiful sound of the band, but you can also just get the atmosphere of being in the crowd. There's nothing like putting on a good pair of headphones and just sinking yourself like into the show. Like, okay, I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm in the crowd with the stereo separation.
Yeah.
You'll maybe hear like one guy having a conversation on that side or a guy smoking a joint on the other side, like lighting a joint on the other side. But you get kind of that full atmosphere. That's something that you don't really get on soundboards, which is why some people I think are drawn towards like the high quality audience recordings, right?
Yeah.
The full atmosphere.
Yeah. I tend to, Pat and I in previous Underdubs episodes have talked about live albums, and I remember talking about Seconds Out, how I love everything about it. The packaging, the set list, the band, the pictures, the labels on the records. I love everything about it except the sound. And it just doesn't move me. And I'm more apt to listen to like Zurich 77 than I am to listen to Seconds Out, personally.
Have you heard the 2009 remix?
Yes, I have that. It's definitely an improvement. Definitely better low end, but it's still, it's a little bit staid, a little sterile in comparison to probably what it was like to be in the room.
I have my own issues with Seconds Out, but that's more just because I'm more of a live purist, I guess. Just I guess the amount of studio work is kind of what rubs me the wrong way. But that's every live album. I think it's no secret if you're a fan of like 70s live albums, you're gonna expect some degree of post production work. But Seconds Out, like most of it, this isn't even known to most that most of it Phil overdubbed his vocals later in the studio. So for me, someone who prefers a more authentic performance, you're not really going to get that from Seconds Out. And also just my issue with it is it's not the full like set list from the Wind and Wuthering tour. They reshuffled some songs. They removed from some songs. It's a very great listen if this is what you want. You want the studio sounding live performances. There you go. But for me personally, I would much rather spin like a high quality soundboard from the era rather than Seconds Out. But that's just me. I'm speaking blasphemy.
Speaking of overdubs on the live stuff, I mean, Peter Gabriel is well known for doing that. But probably my very favorite Genesis album is the first live album from '73. It's like my idealized version of my favorite band. But even on that, you can hear bits of, I forget which song it is, maybe it's all of them, where if you listen closely, you can actually hear the original live vocal in the background. underneath
Yeah.
the overdubbed lead vocal in places, and I think even guitar. I even think Steve Hackett went in and did some fixing. And I'm not talking about in the 90s or the 2000s like they did on the Slam tapes. I'm talking about in 1973. I think there were fixes, at least to the vocals, if not to the guitar. But have you or your allies done the kind of sleuthing where you're like, okay, well, that was recorded at wherever, De Montfort Hall in 1973, and we can compare the Genesis Live version to the actual audience tape, and we can see where this was overdubbed and that was fixed, etc.
Yeah, so I have already done all the work for Genesis Live, for Seconds Out, for Three Sides Live, for they did a Laserdisc release for the Mama Tour, which was their 1983-1984 tour. But all of us, we already have done the work. We have a whole spreadsheet and document of confirming all the recordings.
Awesome.
And I've done all the dirty work of figuring out like what's been overdubbed, what's authentic, because that's also something that's also heavily interested me. Just, it's very nerdy, of course, but that's what happens when you have such a strong passion for this band.
Before we get to the Giga Leak, what is your, or do you have a favorite Genesis tour or a favorite era?
Oh, you guys are going to get me going here. I'm going to put Pat to sleep, and I think Brian is going to be understanding. No, I'm just kidding. My favorite Genesis tour they ever did was the And Then They Were Three tour of 1978. So that tour, it may not have the classic Supper's Ready, which is my personal favorite song. I mean, I've heard that song an inhumanely amount of times. But despite like one song being missing, you cannot let that deter you from wanting to actually listen to what that tour has to offer. That tour has great set list variety. Like throughout the tour, they would introduce some songs, cut some songs, do this, do that. And so it has good set list variety. So you could listen to like 4 different performances from the tour and get like a pretty cool variety in the sets. It's the first tour with Daryl Sturmer. That's their touring guitarist, I think. You guys should be familiar with. He was not on any albums, but this was where Daryl had his start with the band. And there's something about his playing on this tour that's just... He has a jazz fusion background, Daryl, and he's always, I think, kind of tried to infuse that with his Genesis work. But it feels like his jazz fusion touch is like on another level on this tour. You'll hear him like really... There's a lot of solos where it's like a little bit more jazzier than usual, so there's kind of that edge to it. Bill's vocal consistency on this tour is also maybe the best it ever was. I've said before, but I think the vocalist has the hardest role to maintain out of any other band member. The visuals of that tour, it also has the nickname as the Mirrors Tour, because on this tour they had this huge lighting rig with several mirrors that were just drawn up across the stage, and there's certain songs like Afterglow during the beautiful outro of Afterglow, just this beautiful pink fog and the mirrors just come down. It's easy to look up Genesis Vienna 1978 to find this beautiful footage, and you can see this professionally shot. I think it's 16 millimeter or is it 35 millimeter? I'm not sure, but it's this beautiful film, and you can see just these gigantic mirrors.
Yeah.
I love the visual look of the tour. But it's just mainly just the 78 tour is my favorite, I guess. What I'm trying to say is the full package. It has vocal consistency. It has great set lists. It has amazing musicianship and stuff like that. It's number one in terms of
That's
just
cool.
the overall most well-rounded package.
I think most even casual Genesis fans would be familiar with that Chicago Uptown Theater bootleg, which is so well known.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I also love the 78 tour. I think Daryl sounds really good on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some of the tempos are too fast, I think, because they're firmly in like jazz fusion on the ascendancy of public acceptance, with like, soon after this, it would not be at all fashionable to be anyway associated with jazz fusion, but at least for 78, they could get away with it. And
yeah.
So like the outro to The Lady Lies, for example, I think is flipping fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I love those. Yeah, every night Daryl would do a whole new guitar solo. But another big source of improv was the song Say It's All Right, Joe. And in that song, Phil would dress up in character as a guy named Sydney. He would look like this bum who was like drinking, this alcoholic, basically. That's what it was. And he would get heavily into character for that. But for that part of the song, they would on the album, the outro is like, it's like what, 40 seconds. And I find it kind of goes nowhere. Otherwise, I love that song. But live, they turn that whole outro piece into, it's straight up jazz fusion some nights. If you want to hear Genesis do jazz fusion, listen to the 1978 versions of Say It's All Right, Joe. Specifically, those Japanese versions actually are my all-time favorite. Just put on any of those Japan 78 versions, and you will genuinely hear like Genesis doing jazz fusion. It is beautiful. You've never heard anything like that before.
Does it ever surprise you when you analyze what songs were played to think about why certain songs may have been picked for one tour, and then also why a certain song became a perennial favorite versus why some songs were left behind, like we talked about Seven Stones earlier, which I think is a great song with some great guitar playing and great mellotron. And it's also kind of short, so it seems like it'd be easy to throw into a set. But some songs were like Can Utility and the Coastliners, left behind, dustbinned, basically. And yet they played Say It's All Right, Joe. It is surprising to me sometimes which ones made the cut and which ones didn't. And you wonder if there's some behind-the-scenes stuff like, oh, well, we played 2 of your songs already, Tony. We got to play one of mine or I'm walking, you know.
Or in some case, it was maybe just they felt it wasn't transferring well, right? Or maybe it was too complicated. Like, for example, Can Utility and the Coastliners, the reason that one got axed is just because they had to so quickly change from acoustic to electric instruments that it was kind of tricky just for them to pull off on stage. It was just a complicated arrangement, and that's why it didn't stick around. But I guess it just kind of varies. There's so many different examples of why something stayed and why it didn't. Like one of the most famous examples is that Phil, even though he's often villainized as he ruined Genesis, he made it pop, all these rumors. He was the one who was pushing towards Supper's Ready being in their set list in the 80s. And it was Tony and Mike that vetoed it.
I was curious about what are some of the earliest recordings you have of the band, and what are some of the latest recordings you have of the band?
Yeah, so the first recording of Genesis live, it's pretty well known for bootleggers. The first audience recording was during the Trespass tour in Belgium, March 7th, 1971. It's not a great recording, but it is a historical gem just because not only is it like the earliest recording we have of them, but it's the only recording we have of them, period, before the Nursery Crime tour. So it is the one and only recording we have of them live in 1971. Steve Hackett has only been in the band for about 2 months by this point. It's also historically important because it was their first gig overseas. It was their first show outside of the UK. It only had this crowd of like, I think 300 people, and just by some miracle, some guy in that crowd decided to record it. It has a song that was not on any album called The Light, which would later become Lily White Lilith on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. It has the same melodies and stuff as Lily White Lilith, but otherwise it's an 8-minute, I think 9-minute long song that just wasn't on any album. And it is the one and only recording we have of it. So it's like a huge historical document of the band. Even if, like I said, the tape quality isn't that great. I mean, who's going to turn down to hear just all this very important stuff that the tape has? That's the earliest we have, though. It's pretty well known to bootleggers. The latest is their final show, of course, on The Last Domino, because there's a recording for every night of that tour. I mean, the more newer the tour becomes, the more documented it becomes because of the rise of foam recordings and stuff like that. And those whole like reunion tours are like, there's like a million sources of those. Like it's extremely well documented, right?
Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about those, honestly.
As a fan, if you could put your fan hat on instead of your archivist hat on, Kieran, is it diminishing returns as you listen to these 80s, 90s, 2000s set lists where you know it's going to be pretty much the same every night and the band maybe is not quite as exciting, or wonderful as it used to be? Is it difficult for you to wade through 37 different iPhone recordings of a 2022 Last Domino show to find the best one?
I haven't gotten to that point yet, but yeah, it is something that I am dreading a bit, just because it is going to be much more of a trudge, definitely. But um, like I said, it's just more out of something that I feel like I have to do. Just to me, it wouldn't feel right uploading these things without actually listening to them, even
Yeah.
if it's something that like I don't really want to do. It's like I just feel like I have to do it, so I will do it. Plus, I did the whole Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour, so
Yeah.
nothing gets harder than that. So.
Real quick, how many recordings of the Lamb tour did you listen to?
There's 73, but I've heard the Lamb an inhumane amount of times. Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing it.
Did you happen to see Genesis and the 22 shows, the Last Domino shows? No.
No, and I'm still depressed about it because I could have seen them in Toronto, but it was around the time when I just got my first job, and like I had some money, I could have gone, but it was still at the point where I didn't really have like proper savings, so I didn't really get a proper chance to go, and it's something that I'm still upset about. Like even if I don't like how Phil sounded on that tour, just his voice is too far gone, I find out, just because of his age. But like I couldn't even complain about that. Like I would have loved to seen my favorite band live, so it sucks I will never get the chance to do that now. But I'm repping it now. I've seen the Musical Box 5 times now, soon to be 6 in January. So
nice.
I've seen them a fair amount of times.
I guess it's fair to say you like them.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I even
well, they're from Canada, right?
Yeah. I know their keyboardist Ian. He greets me at their shows. They used my channel to help them research for their Selling England tour, which I feel kind of honored about that. Yeah.
One guy that I love the Musical Box too. I've seen him probably close to 10 times over the years.
Yeah.
But I would love to interview for this podcast their drummer, Mark, I think, right? I think that's the same. But I cannot find any contact information for the band or their management. So I cannot extend an invitation. But if he happens to ever hear or see this, please contact me, because I'd love to talk. I'm a drummer, so I would love to talk about drumming in the world's greatest tribute band,
Oh, yeah.
Are we allowed to talk about, can we talk about the Giga Leak? And can we explain to the Underdubs audience, what was the Giga Leak?
Yeah, I have no problem talking about the Giga Leak.
Is it true that the Giga Leak, which was essentially a massive dump of Genesis soundboard materials and maybe some other stuff as well, but mostly soundboard tapes, is that fair to say? And
yeah.
Did it come from the Craig Shirts collection? Or is that a rumor?
Well, majority of them did. No, majority of them did come from Craig Shirts, yeah.
Can you say a few words about who that gentleman was and what was in the Giga Leak?
Yeah, let's take it back. Let's do sit around the campfire, folks. We're gonna dive right into
storytelling.
More Kieran yapping sessions. Let's dive right into this. So yeah, the Giga Leak was something that me and my group, we worked on for about 13 months together, maybe almost 14 months. It was over a year in the making of getting it out there. But essentially what it was, we unveiled it on Memorial Day of this year, that for Memorial Day weekend. And what it was this large collection of a bunch of completely previously unheard soundboard recordings of Genesis. There was also like a little bit of like Lamb studio sessions that had never been heard before. But essentially it was this, we could almost call it like a box set, but in the form of a zip file of just a plethora of soundboards that have been being withheld from the public, that a lot of us had done a lot of work to acquire for everyone. It had an unfortunate ending though. It lasted about 4, maybe 5 days before the Genesis Movement site, which I talked about earlier, and the torrent site where you can download all the recordings, they got hit with a DMCA request from management saying that they must take their site down. And my YouTube channel, the reason why I had to make a new one is I got hit with, if you didn't know on YouTube, it's a 3 strikes and you're out system. I got hit with whatever, 40 something strikes all at once. So it was instant termination for my channel for these new soundboards, and I guess the attention they were receiving. But there's a lot of backstory and stuff to understand of like how we got these and why the outcome turned out the way it did. There's a lot of rumors I've also read on some other sites about like how we obtain these. A lot of funny rumors to me, which I also think it would be nice to clear them up.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so the funniest rumors I've seen is stuff like we stole them or we hacked to get them and stuff like that. No, none of the soundboards were stolen. None of them were hacked. Every single soundboard that was obtained was completely earned in a legitimate way. There was no backdoor methods or anything like that. I guess let's start with square one. Let's go back to how, as much as I can tell about it, I guess, as possible. The Giga Leak started with an auction site, essentially. Someone that I know sent me an auction site. And essentially, one of the daughters of someone whose their dad, they used to work for Genesis touring company. They used to tour with this company called Shoko. And Shoko, they used to tour with many bands, not just Genesis, but like Led Zeppelin, Van Halen. They were just like they were the touring company of like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But essentially, one of the daughter, like her dad, I forget, I don't know what he did at Shoko exactly, but my point is that she was doing some auctions last year and over the last year of to raise money for like these old soundboard recordings that had come from, I guess, various Shoko employees, stuff like that. There wasn't just Genesis. There was like Van Halen, there was this, there was that. And I came across this, and we came across a few Genesis soundboards that had never been released to the public. Being that I am just, at the time, I was just a 21-year-old man, now 22. I'm not a rich man. I could not just fund these myself. So I reached out to friends. I said, hey, can we all pitch in together and we should try and win these things. Long story short, we won this auction, and we got the cassettes physically shipped over to one of my friends who does he does tape transferring. He has a beautiful, like, well-maintained deck, like really good top-of-the-line equipment. So we got them beautifully transferred. And at the time, our plan was like, okay, we have these 4 soundboards. They all had come from the Abacab tour. They were Landover 1981, Hartford 1981. Those shows we already had audience recordings for, but still, like, a soundboard is obviously a huge improvement. And then we also got 2 recordings that had no recordings in any form, which were Ottawa 1981 and Syracuse 1981. So we also got some new unheard recordings. And our plan at the time was we're going to release these like later on in the year. It'll be fun. It'll be exciting. But one of my colleagues who helped me fund for the soundboards had this idea of, hey, I'm in contact with these other collectors. Why don't we try and trade these recordings to get some more stuff? And long story short, we traded those and we got more recordings. So we're like, okay, we're sitting on all these recordings. And over time, it became like a year-long game of like trading this for that, for this for that, until we were sitting on this huge pile of just completely unheard soundboards. But one of the issues is that what we were faced with is, I guess not a lot of people are aware, if you're not in this collecting circle, is there's a certain percentage of these collectors that a lot of people would call them hoarders. And these hoarders, they're called hoarders is because in some way or another, they have something that they refuse to let the public hear for whatever reason it may be. But in some of these cases, these hoarders, their main reason for not wanting others to hear this is they almost get off on the idea that they have something that no one else gets to hear. It seems so silly. It's just an audio recording of like a band, but this is not just in Genesis. This is in the Beatles community, the Led Zeppelin community. Every community is faced with these hoarders where they're just people withholding stuff from the public just for the sole satisfaction that they know they are the only ones that get to enjoy and hear these things. Just the exclusivity is why it's so appealing to them. But my point is that we were kind of faced with this problem of these guys did not want these things out there. Like, we traded with them, and they did not want us to release these things whatsoever. It was like, do not do this. You must keep this under wraps.
The hoarders themselves told you not to share them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But it got to a point where we were thinking to ourselves, there are people that attended these shows and they're not going to be around forever. They're going to be, by the time maybe these do actually leak out, they're going to be long gone, or they're going to get much older, and who knows, like God forbid they get like whatever dementia or things like that. They're not even going to remember the show 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whenever these actually do finally get released. So kind of our ultimate, I guess, question was, do we hold on to these for however long they want us to hold on to these? Or do we just say screw it and drop them all? And ultimately we went with the latter decision, which was we feel it was just the best move to make everyone hear these.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how the final release came to be, which was just we felt it was the best thing to do for the community. We felt like everyone had a right to hear these.
Do you think it was one of these hoarders who alerted authorities to the existence of the Giga Leak materials, or do you think it was just they found out through some other means and shut you down?
No, so yeah, me and my I guess my colleagues were all under the theory that it was a targeted thing from one of these possible hoarders. Historically, the band has been pretty lenient with bootlegs and stuff like that. I mean, Genesis have publicly spoken out in the past that they have no issue as long as like there's no money or anything involved. They don't really care about that sort of stuff. So it seems very out of character that all of a sudden, because there have been soundboards that are released in the past, like decades ago, soundboards have slowly leaked out and there was never legal action. It just seemed very fishy to us that all of a sudden now it's a problem.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of arguments saying like it's because they changed labels and rights changed and stuff like that, which maybe you can argue that. But I had soundboards on my old channel for 4+ years and they never had strikes. They never had copyright issues even once.
I always wondered if it had to do with the way they recently got involved with Concord Music or sold their rights. At least Phil, Mike, and Tony, and maybe Steve. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about Concord, but like I said, there had been recordings and soundboards of that trio era that never had issues. It was just coincidentally, I got strikes for only the new Giga Leak material. I even got striked for stuff that I think legally Concord wouldn't have been able to strike because I was under the impression the Concord deal was only for the 3-piece era, but my channel got strikes for even a few of the Peter era stuff that was a part of the Giga Leak.
Wow.
It's just anything that was a part of the Giga Leak I got a strike for. So for me, I'm under the impression that one of these orders, I guess, were unhappy with the fact that their stuff was out there. It just seems too calculated and specific the way the takedowns happened for me to just believe that it was really just a matter of like real copyright. I refuse to believe that personally.
Was it just the YouTube channel that got the strikes and was taken down, or were there other platforms where this content was removed?
The Genesis Movement site, the torrent site where all the recordings were being shared, we had the full package on there, the full Giga Leak package on there. It was like 100 gigabyte file, however big it was. And yeah, after that got taken down, and the owner of the site got a DMCA request email saying that they must take down the full site. After it being up on the air for over 2 decades with no issues, all of a sudden now it's an issue. Nowadays, the Genesis Movement site is back up and running with a few more guidelines set in place, and there's been no copyright issues still. Also on my new channel, I've gotten a few of the Giga Leak show posted, and they've been up for like a month now, and also no copyright issues. So
well, I was going to ask you, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to slowly weave them into your offerings, or are you scared now that stuff that is even not related to the Giga Leak is going to get struck down, or how do you manage that anxiety?
we're just going to, I guess, feel it out. We're just going to see how it goes. I mean, I have, we had a recording from the Lamb Tour, part of the Giga Leak, Chicago 1974. I've had that on my new channel, like I said, for about a month now. And that's had no copyright issue. It almost has 1,000 views and it has no issues. So I think for the time being, it's okay. But we're just going to see. It's more of I'm going to feel it out. If I get a strike, I'll weave it back for the Giga Leak stuff. But that's all I can really say is I just gotta hope that nothing happens.
Do you think YouTube is really the best platform for you if it's so easily taken away?
I mean, it is like doing it on quicksand, but we have everything backed up. There's a site called Mega, which is like a file hosting site. And we have our own Genesis drive over there, which is almost like an alternative to the movement site. So instead of torrenting, we have it all organized by folder, and we have all the recordings there. Even that got attacked with strikes. Only the Giga Leak stuff, which was also fishy because those links, the only way you would have gotten those links is if you asked one of us for the links. So it does seem suspicious, how they got those links, knowing to strike those, right? But we do have everything like backed up, and we have backups of backups. Like we have everything is going to be archived like for the rest of time. There's no concern about that. YouTube is just the easy way for people to access.
It is very convenient.
That's my sorts of it. It's just the convenience is why I do the YouTube stuff, and also it's also just fun to me, like making the thumbnails. Like I find a good image and I'll add the text to it, and I'll make the write-ups. I love writing my thoughts about it, about the show, stuff like that. But
I love the attention to detail.
Yeah.
Like you said, in your content, I'm looking at one Chicago 4th 75 with Peter with the jacket. It's just
great
I
love that shot, and that's a real photo from the show too. That really is from
nice
the Chicago 75 performance, so it works out. But I start with the image, and then I just add like whatever the text details, and I always like I like getting the font right as well, like for the era. Like if it's a Lamb Lies Down show, it'll use the same fonts as the Lamb album. If it's a Trick of the Tail tour performance, I'll have the Trick of the Tail fonts. Like I always try and decorate it as if like it really is a part of that era.
No, it looks good.
It's a part of the fun for me. Thank you.
Yeah, as a graphic designer, your attention to the font,
thank you,
topography makes me. There's like a little warm.
Thank you.
I feel warmth here in this part of my chest. Now let me ask you this, and I don't think we've covered this. You now none of this. You're not dealing with any video footage. This is all audio. Is that correct?
We do deal with some video. I don't upload them personally, other than a couple weeks ago I released it's a video reconstruction of Supper's Ready on the 1982 tour. Basically, I got like all the existing footage of that song, and I kind of like edited it together to give you like the full experience. But other than that, I don't really upload video. But we do deal with video for like some audience shot footage. There's another channel, which it isn't mine, but I have helped contribute towards it, called Classic Rock Media Archive. That's a beautiful channel. They have hundreds of videos of like audience shot footage, like 8mm, like Super 8, and like 16mm. And it's not just Genesis; it's like dozens and dozens of bands. But we've gotten some like Genesis film like scanned, like working with those guys, and they get them like properly scanned on like properly done like scan stations. And
I love the fact that and I'm sure you're using some AI tool at some level of analysis here, but the fact that you're like unadulterated audio, you're trying to keep the signal chain
Absolutely.
as clean as possible. And that the warmth is still here.
I do think it's important. I mean, especially now we live in a time, even for like studio albums, a lot of old albums get remastered, and in reality, they're just like compressing and brickwalling the sound, and it just sounds horrible. I think a lot more people should learn to do less is more for this kind of stuff, personally. And I guess if this, I guess goes to anyone if they're listening to this. It's don't be afraid to reach out to us if you have anything you'd like to share. Photos, videos, audience recordings. That's another thing I archive a lot of is photos. A lot of people just don't really care about photos as much. But if you have anything like that to share, like even like a crappily taken photo, if you have anything that hasn't been seen and you feel like sharing it, shoot me an email.
Cool.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for joining us again on this episode of Underdubs. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. See you next time.